This meeting to order. Looks like Clint wasn't able to make it today. Public comments, first round of public comments. If you could keep it to 3 minutes or less, that would be great. Going once.
Like to go on, like, would you like to?
Oh, whatever's comfortable for you.
I was
Yep.
gonna just quick read. My name's Christina Ford and I represent the Lakeshore Housing Alliance of Ottawa County, the COC, the Continuum of Care. And just wanted to make a comment about the NOFO and just read. Ottawa County's always believed in strong local solutions and responsible stewardship of federal resources. However, the new HUD FY 2025 funding rules create serious challenges for our community. By cutting guaranteed renewals from 90% to just 30%, capping capping permanent housing at 30% of funding, these challenges and changes put more than 400 households at risk, including 150 children in a population where 40% live with permanent disabilities. They're the very households that both emergency shelter and need permanent housing options to break the cycle of homelessness. Extra services and the supportive services are a good thing that the government is stepping in with. And our system rightly prioritizes getting people into emergency shelter through street outreach, but that's only the first step. Without places for people to land long-term, like truly affordable housing, we risk cycling families through crisis instead of creating stability. Our providers have invested millions based on prior federal guidance, and sudden changes without transition support will strain local taxpayers and charitable organizations. We urge HUD to provide flexible and bridge funding so Ottawa County can adapt responsibly while protecting the progress we've made and ensure that emergency services lead to lasting housing solutions, not just temporary fixes. So just thank you for listening to me this morning.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment? Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, Chris.
Me?
Yes, sir, you are up.
Alright, yeah, I guess we'll come up here.
Yeah, take a seat.
And then actually, David, do you want to come up with me too? Maybe. So a couple things, if you want to go. I think most of you have met David DeVelder, if not, David is kind of our guy. I'm not kind of, he is our guy on the ground, that's doing all these loans we're doing with the housing fund. And do you have the thing at the
Yes.
pipeline report I sent? Well, probably do you have the other one? It's probably just kind of a cleaner one. So yeah, the two reasons I bring in David, today, one, is because he is the guy on the ground. Two is this will be my last meeting with you guys. As I've told Paul, I'm gonna be, leaving IFF at the end of the year. Had a great opportunity kind of fall in my lap to go work for another, CDFI, and do some national work. Still live in Michigan. Still will probably be doing a lot in West Michigan, including working with IFF on a number of things, including maybe some of this stuff. So I won't go too far, but like formally, this is my last hurrah with you guys as IFF. But it had really, really loved this. We were fortunate enough to 2 days ago be at the Kent County, meeting for the housing fund. And yeah, I consider the work we've done in Kent, Ottawa County, some of the proudest stuff of my nearly 9-year tenure at IFF. So again, want to thank all you guys for your partnership. And then make sure, you got to see and meet David. And then, what I will do, Paul, is make sure I make some handoffs just for you. Again, David continues to be the guy on the ground, doing the loans, but anything on the investment side, all the other stuff, just make sure that we tie that off, and I'll get you their contact information. So with that, maybe David, if you want to kind of talk through a little bit, kind of where we stand. I think, again, we've seen a little bit slower uptake in Ottawa than we have in Kent, but as you can see, we're continuing to kind of move. The pipeline hasn't shifted a ton, formally since our last meeting, but maybe David, you can kind of talk about some of the things you see coming down in 2026.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm gonna look at this a little bit because I didn't print it out. So David DeVelder, I'm a senior lender with IFF. I've been at IFF about 2 years, but prior to that, I always did community development, nonprofit, housing development in Kent County primarily. I grew up in Holland, so Ottawa County is my home. I still have family in Holland, so, I always am thankful when I drive into Ottawa County and I'm like, man, I'm back at home. I love this area. I lived in Allendale for 10 years, so very familiar with the area. Really, Ottawa County, we're super proud of because Samaritas, that project, we've highlighted that nationally because it's a passive house. And the way that they did the development with Samaritas and Pinnacle Construction is probably one of the nicest, most innovative developments we've seen, that I've seen in my career. And going to that Rubicon was amazing. So I think Ottawa County needs to be super proud of that. Magnus is another one that we have worked with Magnus around our entire footprint, and they are nearing completion on Ottawa County. I don't know, Paul, have you been out to that one?
Yes,
They're doing lease up now, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So that's, and that's a lot of units. They've started to introduce childcare, which is in alignment with IFF into their developments. The one in Holland, I think, has a childcare, right?
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I
Yeah.
probably have not highlighted that before. As we started working with Magnus, as they were scaling up in different places, they said, what could we do to improve these? And we said, maybe add an early childhood center in each of them. And they actually, on a go forward, have partnered with a child care provider. And in every one of their developments is going to be putting a child care center, which I think is pretty great.
Let's see.
Yeah, I encourage you to visit there. Be happy to give you guys a tour. We work very closely with Magnus and Tony Wilmot, who's their director of VP of real estate. We just did a bus tour with the developer day with the Ottawa and Allegan County. We have a little bit of our money in Allegan County too. And I thought, the first stop was that Magnus site, and everybody was just like, there's so many amenities in those. And with its location right at the highway there, Myers right there. So it's, we've been looking at that when my former employer was Dwelling Place, which is the next projects that we'll talk about too. Well, Lakewood Apartments, that one's under construction with Midwest Construction and Scott Gearlings, and going really well. I love that location as well. But Collin Park is closing next week. So that's a LIHTC that had been in the works prior to me even coming to Dwelling Place. I was at Dwelling Place 4 years prior to IFF, and what it takes to put these projects together is a big lift. But I will say Holland is just doing everything that they possibly can, Holland and Holland Township, to bring new housing. I would say they're outpacing Kent County in for sale housing. And innovative LIHTC like this, which has 2 campuses. It's the Hope Church campus, which is my grandfather's church. And, my dad grew up right next to that site, and Collin Park to have rental. So I think they're 24, maybe 26 units. I think one is 26. I think it's 52 units total. One downtown on Hope, and then another one right on Collin Park. And then they're going to put Community Land Trust townhomes right next to the LIHTC building on the park. And that'll, I think, be 6 units. That's in the pipeline. It looks like it's 5 units. So really cool things happening there. And then Grand Haven CLT, a Dwelling Place, is looking at a site in Grand Haven as well. I think it's Dispelder Street, no relation. But it's it's right downtown. I think it's not 16 now. I think it's a little less. And then Ferrisburg and Nunico, which is a for-profit developer, Casey Young and Artemis Development. We work with them around the state. They're working on some TIFs. I would love if anybody can talk about what they're hearing from that group, because are they working with any municipalities? So in those areas, I would love to get feedback, because I've not talked to them recently.
Any questions for David?
Anybody?
Yes, I have a question. When we look at this pipeline sheet, we see the county share that's been committed to these projects at this point, the 8.9 million, and we've invested 10 million. It just begs that question, like, what does that look like from 26 on?
Yeah,
On the ability to continue to increase the pipeline of products going to market with our funding? How can you go through that again?
sure. Yeah, no, happy to do so. Just, you know, as a reminder to folks, so there's a few things that happen here, and some of these deals, you know, we'll maybe have done, you know, you can see kind of we do a construction loan amount. You know, we may, you know, once that flips to perm debt, we may get taken out of that. So there's a couple, it looks like we're there. If it does flip to perm debt, that doesn't mean that those funds are not able to be replenished, because as we discussed previously, we're members of the Federal Home Loan Bank out of Chicago, and we're able to pledge that paper in effect and get capital from the Federal Home Loan Bank to come in, and then we're able to use that to recycle. We're also, you know, again, pulling, you know, to remind the committee, we're obligated to lever $2 for every $1 that the county put in. So we're able to pull capital from our balance sheet. We're also looking at more specific investors to kind of come in and help us expand this loan program in Kent and Ottawa counties. And so, you know, the more we can do that, the better off we'll be. And so I wouldn't look at this as, you know, it's capped out and we're not going to be able to do additional loans. It should start recycling fairly quickly. And frankly, when push comes to shove, how we've been doing this, and we've bumped up to it a little bit more in Kent County right now. It doesn't necessarily mean if someone comes to us, like, let's say we are kind of capped out at for some kind of term, right? A few months, you know, while things recycle. It doesn't mean we say no. What it means is we, you know, this capital we're putting out at a couple percentage points below kind of our market rate capital. We just say, look, there's no more of the lower cost capital available. We'll still do the loans. And again, we haven't bumped into that problem in Ottawa County, but that's how we solve for it. It's not a, hey, we'll turn you away. It's, you know, instead of 5.5%, you may be at 7% or something like that. And so, but really the way we ultimately solve for that, one is, you know, getting these things recycling as quick as they can, but two, you know, getting a broader bucket of funds. And frankly, that's, you know, part of my new role at the new shop is helping, you know, things like this scale up and get capital. And so I think I'll be working with David and the team to make sure we're thinking about additional investment and things like that.
Chris, what kind of ROI do you offer investors that you seek support from?
Yeah, and so it's a good question, and you know that my answer is this: is that the cheaper the capital we get in, the cheaper we can put it out the door. So some of our foundation partners that are in the Ottawa County, like Grand Haven Community Foundation, you know, they're getting 1%, right? The county, I mean, as a reminder too, the county's capital is a loan to us, but you guys were kind enough to give it to us at 0%. So we'll pay that back, you know, in 20 years, but, you know, without interest. And so as we go out, our ideal is to get the capital between 1% and 3% from, you know, corporate investors or foundations. If they tick it up higher, fine. It just means we're not maybe able to offer, you know, as much of a discount. So I'd say kind of like we try to set like a 3% ceiling, you know, for that investment.
What kind of add-on do you have to have administratively? You know, for example, if you can offer 3%, does that mean you need to make 5% loans, or can you loan at 3.5%? Or?
Yeah, it's typically about a 200 basis points, so 2% kind of, you know, overhead. So when we price our loans, it's about 200 basis points over our blended cost of capital. And so coming into this, we're mixing in, you know, the 0% Ottawa County money, the 1% foundation money, but then the other stuff we're going and pulling, you know, from our balance sheet and other investors might be coming to us at 7%, because that's what the banks are charging us. And so all of that kind of gets, you know, combined in that pool and then sets the rate. And so it's not, you know, we don't peg it to like, you know, a benchmark out in the world or anything, but we do set the rates, you know, monthly and publish those rates. And that's really what function of what it is. It's our blending cost of capital plus about 200 basis points for overhead.
Do investors like say independent individual investors, do they get any kind of tax break, or are there any other incentives that can or are being
It
offered?
wouldn't, I don't believe they would get a tax break because even though we are a nonprofit, because they're not donating to us, they're investing and getting a return. But we are set up, and we do have some cases where we have individuals as investors. So individuals, we have companies that have invested, in us, and so we're able to offer that to really any accredited investor, to be able to come into this.
I'm just wondering if it isn't possible to establish some like public drive to get investment and,
I think so, and like one of the, I'll actually send you, Paul, and again, I hate to keep, I know we're in Ottawa County, I don't keep saying Kent, because we're doing this in Kent County too, right? But Kent County, we're kind of getting to that point, where we're starting to say, okay, how can we intentionally go out and raise from the corporate community and others? And so they put together a nice annual report. So I'll send it to you, Paul. And I mean, if you want to send it to the committee to just kind of show the work there, but that was to start being used as a bit of a marketing piece. Then, Al Vandenberg and, kind of the county team are starting to think about how to, get us out in front of some of the corporations. We're also working with, the chamber and folks like that to think about what that looks like to get out to some of the larger employers. We had some initial discussions with some of those folks, some of the big names, here in West Michigan, to see like, what would it take to kind of invest in a fund like this? And I think the conclusion we came to there is kind of, what it's going to take. We frankly thought, like, if we show this and say, look, these dollars have come in, we've had massive success, these guys will, be very interested in investing a few $1 million with us. What we've really come to understand is that they're going to need a little bit more than that. They're going to need something a little bit tangible. So, some of it is, like Ryan Kilpatrick working on some of his corridor strategy things where it's like, hey, if you invest in this fund, it's going to go into these 3 corridors and we're going to create 1,000 units of housing, right? So we're kind of working on what that pitch looks like. And I think, David and the team working with you guys here in Ottawa County to think about what that looks like. Or it could be, I know you're going to have an update about the, tiny homes or small homes or whatever the terminology you're using is. It could be things like that, like, hey, we would put capital into a project like this through the fund. But, for us to be able to do that, like, we'd love to have additional corporate investment, because the difference is, I mean, theoretically, these organizations could invest directly in the project, but they don't know how to invest in a housing deal, and they're taking on that risk. Instead, they're investing through us and taking on the risk of IFF corporation not paying them back, which we've got a 40-year history of paying our investors back. So they're kind of diffusing their risk, by putting it through the fund, but then we can target specific projects. So I do think, working on what that pitch looks like in Ottawa County will be really important in 2026 as we're bringing more projects online, but then thinking about how to expand the capital base.
has anyone, oh, sorry,
Oh, you can go ahead.
anyone considered offering like a property tax freeze on investors who, put in a certain amount? Like, if you were to be able to say, if you invest in our development of housing in Ottawa County can freeze your taxes or even offer a slight discount. And certainly it would be well offset by increased property taxes from the additional development, but you might find people that would be willing to say, hey, if you freeze my property tax for the period of my investment, if I withdraw the investment at any time, then my taxes can be readjusted. But if I keep the investment there, then you won't raise my property tax. You've got, commercial entities that might find that to be, highly advantageous, and certainly individual homeowners.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's outside of my purview, but I think it's something, that can and should be considered. There are some things that they were moving in Lansing and then they stalled out, for the way these things happen. But that was, and I don't know all the details of the legislation, but it was in effect, if you did make an investment in like a community development project, you could get like, tax break on like your income tax or if you're
Tax abatements.
Yeah.
A lot of economic development already happens with tax abatements.
Yeah.
With-
And this was like very
Corporations.
specific, like if you
Yeah.
invested in these kind of things. So I do think, again, thinking about how to layer those tools together. I mean, obviously, the more, we've talked about like our desire to go from, like I'd say being passive and reactive to more proactive, thinking about how to layer the various tools, the TIF tools, et cetera. Whether it is something like that, that's more of a localized tax break if you invest in something like this. I think it's those types of things that have to happen to incentivize additional investment to come in. Where people are willing to take that 3% return instead of maybe, getting a 5% return somewhere else, right? So like that's the offset. When the interest rates were lower, getting a 2 or 3% return, something like this was actually pretty good for a lot of folks.
Right.
That as rates ticked up, they're able to get fixed income returns a bit higher in other places. So that's kind of, the balance, what we have to deal with. But I think any way you can layer different incentives in whether it's at the project level or whether it's at the funding level, for sure.
Yeah, and there has to be a variety of perks that could be offered that are effectively not an increased cost, but I mean, it could be anything, priority for your street to get plowed or, any little thing that could be,
I'd pay
worked
for
out.
that. Yeah.
That, hey, we're gonna do it anyway, but by incentivizing, citizen investment in the county,
Yeah.
can we find a way to, yes, we're only offering 3%, but if you factor in these other benefits, you're probably receiving about a 5% return anyway. And
Yeah.
you're helping the community.
Yeah, I think certainly that's some things that can be worked out. And then like we do see, some employers that are out there that are actually leaning in and doing kind of workforce housing, investing in it, creating it, have seen a, kind of general return for them in lower employee turnover and things like that. So there's linkages that can be made to make a true like ROI makes sense, right? You're not just doing it for purely philanthropic reasons, like you can achieve like an aggregate ROI on it as an employer by, diminishing the turnover of your folks, et cetera, et cetera. So I think working on some of those linkages and thinking about a strategy, again, that's what we're starting to proactively do with Kent County. It's probably, the evolution that needs to happen in Ottawa County in order to expand the fund.
Doug, you had something?
Yeah, just a question I received from somebody, like. Where are we as far as the stack goes? I mean, are we one of the top tier investors? Are we kind of doing a lot of gap funding?
It really is, and David can speak to this too, it really is kind of coming in and filling the gap that gets these projects done. Because you can see again, total loans of 24 million, total development costs of about 160 million. So, we're getting some nice leverage on this and kind of being what we were intended to be, right? If these projects can fully get funded somewhere else.
Right.
Let them get funded somewhere else, but we're coming in and really closing the gap. Would there be anything you'd add to that, David?
No, I mean, I'll just get some of the thoughts off, and then maybe we can circle back to that, and we have a comment about land banking too, but before I even talk about that, I just want to mention that with these types of projects, and we see this, I mean, I've seen this for years. A lot of these are on land that's either owned by churches, underutilized property. The one in Holland and Collin Park, that's like literally like an easement to the road where they're building the housing. And Community Action House also provided their property, and they're actually an investor in a partner in the project. So land is incredibly important, so whether it's a parking lot, something, church parking lot, that's the Hope Reformed, there was a playground. United Methodist also is gonna provide their parking lot in downtown Holland for our next phase with dwelling place. So churches are incredibly important, underutilized land, developers that own land, incredibly important. That's how we've done some projects in Grand Rapids. Getting that land cost to 0 or lower helps provide some gap. We put a number of properties. I used to work in land banking for about 8 years and for Kent County Land Bank before it was closed. We have Ottawa County Land Bank, if we can put properties in the land bank, that's a huge incentive, because it gets the taxes to zero, and then when we do the TIF, our starting point is zero. Anything more you wanted to say? Well, and before I even say that, I just want to finish. Emerging Developer Program in Kent County has been incredibly successful. They provided $200,000 grant alongside of their brownfield program to incentivize smaller scale developers to do projects. That 200 grand pays for pre-development. We've done 15, the city's done 15 projects to date. We funded or are gonna be funding 5 of those through the housing fund. So there's a little bit of like stars aligning there. And then ADU tiny homes, that's been a huge push. We're starting to see a ton of momentum with that. So when the fund started, we had all this pent up demand, huge projects. And now in Kent County, we're starting to see some smaller projects. Some of that is a result of emerging developer programs. Some of it is partnerships with churches. ICCF has done a capital campaign. They've raised $15 million in the last year for building on church sites. I think they're willing to come to Ottawa County. So, yeah, enough said there. Anything you want to say about
I would just
that?
say the land bank is, willing to work with developers and trying to get homes into the county.
Just ask you a question. I'm Ken. I'm the new guy here.
Yeah.
I feel like I came in and the movie was just ending.
Fair enough.
What do you guys do and how do you do it? Like I'm a kindergartner. Just real quick, could you do that for me, please?
Yes, sir.
I hate to hold up the group, but
That's fine.
I don't
It'll be a
feel I'll
good
be able to
reminder for-
contribute in the future if I.
It'll
don't
be a good
understand.
reminder for the team here as well. So we're a community development financial institution, CDFI. You know, we lend across the Midwest to largely to nonprofits to do community facilities. About a third of our work is in the affordable housing space. So we got the investment from Ottawa County 2 years ago, no, almost 2.5 years ago, with the commitment to, you know, to lend here, to get more aggressive in lending and bringing on the housing. Our lending is a bit unique in that, you know, even though we lend on real estate, we don't necessarily require appraisals. We can lend up to 95% of costs instead of, you know, so our borrowers don't have to bring as much equity to the table. So we're doing things and have flexibility that many other financial sources don't have. We're not regulated like banks are. You know, we were set up to go places where banks can't figure it out.
Okay, you were set up by who to do this?
Actually, the federal government created the CDFIs were under the Treasury Department. And so there's about 1,400 CDFIs in the country right now. We're one of the larger ones. But, you know, so we do get, you know, accredited by them. We get some capital from, you know, the federal government through the federal CDFI fund. Most of our funding actually does come from banks, though. They put money in us and we put money where they can't put it. So most of our balance sheet is banks, health systems, foundations, you know, folks like that invest through us into projects. And that's where, you know, this has been a great partnership, you know, with the county, because we got the county dollars, we got some funds from the NBC, we got some philanthropic dollars, and then, as I mentioned earlier, we pull from our balance sheet and our other investors to put these deals together.
So we've got these projects here, which I recognize, and they're all like really good projects. We also in Ottawa County have some land that needs some help to be able to be further used.
Sure.
i.e. brownfield kind of stuff. How are you tied in with those places so that we can use that land? Because there is money there from the federal government and the state government to bring that land up to the place where you can build on it, and actually they support some of that stuff. Do you work with that group at all?
I mean, so
Do we
certainly,
know where all those things are and say, hey, we've got a brownfield over here that, you know, we could, go in, test the soil, do some remediation, give you some incentive to build on it because we can't do anything else. Is that being done someplace?
I don't know how that's all being tied together, David or Paul, if you can speak to some of that.
Yeah, I think
It's not
when,
terrible because I'm on the housing commission and I'm on the brownfield commission.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And I don't see how they know each
You're,
other.
yeah,
I think
That's
it's-
why I'm
You're a
asking.
dangerous guy, yeah.
yeah, well, an advantage is Brownfield Authority and housing is under the umbrella of strategic impact, so we're always coordinating on that. The big opportunity is for the development community to know that this revolving loan fund exists. Because They can say, hey, we got some property, we're looking to, we wanna purchase it, let's do our phase 1, phase 2 assessments, let's see if there's any contamination issues. Start to build that capital stack. They just need to be aware that this opportunity exists. So that's always a continuous conversation.
Well, I was just looking for a big map of Ottawa County that says these are all the brownfield opportunities that exist. So that when somebody comes in and wants to do something like that, we can point to some of these sites where there would be additional funding available above and beyond what we're all doing now. And I just, I
Yes.
don't see that big connection.
No, so
I
I-
haven't seen my map yet.
Yeah, no, so I would
We have
say.
one for you.
I would say, that's exactly kind of, I think where we're hoping to head with it is being more proactive with things like that. We're seeing that in Allegan County in particular, where they're out actively marketing sites and we're pulling in developers and they're saying, okay, here's the site, here's the incentives we have lined up, and talk to IFF. And so, you know, I think, you know, the more the county can work to do that, to tie those things together. You know, again, that's some of the stuff that we're seeing in Kent County too, where they're saying, okay, these are the corridors that are gonna need investment. Here's the tools, here's the TIF tools, all those things. And by the way, here's the housing fund.
Okay,
And so, yeah, I think we're at that point.
On the continuum here, you work with all these places, who does it the best, what county? Who makes the linkage between that stuff?
You want me to-
and- Yeah, tell it, who does the best, we should go copy paste, right? If somebody's already doing it, why should we sit here and figure it out?
Well, I'll tell you on it, well, as David mentioned on
You're leaving anyway, go ahead.
No, I mean, you know, David mentioned on a city basis that Holland is doing very well with it, but I do think, Kent County is a little bit ahead of you guys and just how proactive they're being with this. And how they're really thinking about these things, and so I think, you know, again, that's not a critique of Ottawa County, but I think that they're doing a
They
good job.
probably have more
tying it together.
opportunities in brownfield sites too.
Yeah,
There's more developers, there's more resources, there's a longer history of community development. We need to build that out in Ottawa County. But it's not gonna look the same, right? I mean, you know, Ottawa County has a lot of rural property.
Yeah, it shouldn't. look the same.
But our city, Holland, I think is a model. I mean, what Holland has done, and I see Jubilee here, I mean, like. I think they have more for sale housing going on in Holland than in Kent County, that's affordable. I mean, I really do, I mean, we'd have to look at the numbers, but and Muskegon even has a ton of for sale housing, so the Lake Shore is an incredible opportunity. But Kent County, we see a huge variety of projects, and I think that's what we need to see in Ottawa. We can't just have all these big developers doing, you know, the same people. We need the smaller, you know, the emerging developers. We met with one in Holland, it's a small nonprofit community development, you know, neighborhood based. You know, where are those in Ottawa County? You know, even moving toward Grand Rapids, like, you know, on the edge of Hudsonville, we've seen a lot of developers chasing, you know, and some of them don't need the housing fund, which is fine, but those that need it, we want to make sure that they can utilize it.
Yeah, but I mean, my thing, A, how do we make that link? And B,
Yeah.
when we have a number of employers that are moving headquarters here and bringing people in and stuff. What are we doing to them to incentivize them to participate in developing housing?
Yeah.
I mean, if you bring in a bunch of executive level people, they can come in and find houses, but they're gonna displace somebody else.
Yeah, no, and again, I
This-
think it's those strategic meetings that I think
Yep.
need to happen, and I think that happens through the county, but then the county. Introducing us in at the appropriate times to, you know, talk to folks.
And I'll say that
I'm just.
those conversations are just, you know, they are happening, right? It takes a lift to get everybody to start to coordinate on that. And Lakeshore Advantage, they're the economic development agency for the county. They bring in business and they help businesses expand. They are 100% having conversations with those entities about housing. We are also in the process with Lakeshore Advantage. They're hiring a dedicated housing development coordinator. That starts to position us to be more intentional like Kent County. So all these pieces start to come together. We're also having conversations and we've received a proposal to do corridor analyses very similar to Kent County. So we can start to identify those opportunity parcels. So all those things are in the works. I know people like to say, hey, why aren't we just doing this right now? But we are. It's like, it's all starting to come together and this stuff. It takes a little bit of time. And we also have an incremental developer here in the audience that participates. So we know those folks and they're paying attention.
I'm just trying to get caught
Yep.
up, sorry.
No, it's great.
No,
I
you
mean,
don't have to apologize, just so you know,
Yeah.
all
And-
of
and
those
as
things are
David-
spinning.
Mentioned earlier too, right, some of these projects take 7 or 8 years to put together, so you're seeing the tail end of some things that had years of work going into it, but I think to Paul's point, you feel the right momentum happening
Yeah.
here, and that should, and this is at minimum 20-year partnership we have with the county that we're only 2 years into, so, yeah, I feel like, again, looking at it from, the lens right now, I feel like we're really, we've done great things, we're in good shape and, set up for future
The
success.
problem didn't happen overnight and the solution's not gonna happen overnight either.
So, hey, we're not the best, Kent County is, let's go figure out how we can be the best.
But we're also very, very different.
Very different, but.
I don't like the second, but it's okay.
Well, no, I mean, you threw down the challenge, go figure it out.
I don't know who I threw it at, that's what I'm.
Uh,
Yeah, but now.
One last comment, when Ryan did that presentation the last time we were here on zoning. That kind of conversation has really accelerated in Kent County, primarily the city of Grand Rapids, but other communities are looking at it in Kent County as well. That is critical to the
Yep.
conversation. I mean, that's at the beginning. of
And
the
that's-
conversation.
and that's
And
where
we
we
all
always
know,
revolve
to
back
say,
yeah.
We've noticed some, reaping the benefits of that acceleration in the city of Grand Rapids, where now we can do it. We can do tinies, we can do incremental. We couldn't, I mean, Holland has. You guys did the most dense, single family home ownership right in downtown Holland. We haven't done that yet in Kent County. So, I mean, Holland is already like farther ahead than most communities, but. It's difficult to scale it because it's so expensive, right? In Kent County, we have more opportunities for affordable property and affordable development. We have way more developers. But, and we want to utilize existing developers first that are here before the Magnuses come in.
Mhm.
But the zoning is so critical to this.
Absolutely, and that makes it tough as a county, because we have no authority over that.
Not much. I mean, you can.
How many-
Ryan
try to
Talk to them.
How many different municipalities do we have?
24.
24.
Mhm.
So we have 24 different municipalities. And we have a landscape in Ottawa County that is drastically different than Kent County, not even just population. But topography is very different. So those conversations have to be cognizant of those types of differences. For any headway, because if you say, hey, we want to be like City of Grand Rapids, or hey, we want to be like Kent County, you're gonna get kicked right out the
Oh,
door.
no, we want the process to work smoothly like theirs
Yep.
does. Not we don't want to emulate them, and you guys
Right.
had the perfect answer here about, how do you get these things to happen? You said, prioritize plowing the roads, tell them you won't plow the roads until they do that.
It's
That
those,
was stupid.
yeah, it's those.
It's a thought.
building settings. Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, you zoning commission, sorry.
Chris,
You show up.
Thank you guys.
Hi, thanks, guys.
It's a pleasure getting to know you, Chris, and thank you for your work.
It's been great.
Yeah,
It's been really great.
Good luck in your new adventure.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Speaking of zoning, small footprint homes initiative, Matt,
Yeah,
You're up.
we're still continuing to push forward towards our January 8th Housing Commission date of release of the plans, and Rich has more details on all of the things we're doing to prep to release those on the website. That'll be my last Housing Commission meeting probably, and I'll start to transition off the project, but we're excited for that and just continuing to work towards that.
Yeah, I could just jump in,
Yeah.
once. The final plans are finally, public ready, I'm working behind the scenes, with our web developers to get that form ready, the idea that I introduced last month, and, kind of a preview, gallery of the different styles, and then having people fill out some very basic information to provide to us, and then I'm gonna prepare a press release, sort of summarizing the feat that we've accomplished in the past year and a half or so, and summarizing the different availability of the different styles of housing and how it's non-proprietary, where we're gonna move away from saying open source so much because it's a little associated with software more than physical hardware. And we're really excited for that January 9th date. And we're just gonna move forward through the holidays to get that established. We'll have a preview website that Matt and Paul, and if any housing commissioners want to review over the holidays, once I have the basic template, I will be sharing that forthcoming.
Is that something you can share with the commission via email?
Yes.
That'd be great. That's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And that bodes well to our conversation of the 24 different municipalities having that conversation, having something tangible to discuss with them. Not, hey, this is what is needed, but here's a possible solution.
Absolutely, and those materials, right, to educate and inform our local municipalities on this opportunity is really important, because we've obviously felt the swell of support for building smaller with right-sized lots. But in our townships, nobody can build an 850 square foot home on a 5,000 square foot lot, right? You can't do it by zoning. So one of the things that we've been doing is we're looking at to start to help bring the conversation forward in a strong way with local units of government. We're taking a sample few townships and we're looking at their zoning, and we're looking at where existing infrastructure is. And it ties back to the conversation we just had. And we're looking at these opportunity parcels just to get the discussion going. And we're saying, hey, local unit of government, your ordinance says you can have a minimum of 12,000 square foot lot in these areas that have existing infrastructure. Based on the number of available opportunity parcels, just as a hypothetical, say, hey, if you would reduce your minimum lot size in those areas with infrastructure to 6,000 square foot, we could get this many more housing units to go in those areas. So we just want to feed them information they can then take back to the planning commission and say, okay, as we think about this, what can we do? We've got a few townships that have approached us. I think I mentioned this before. They're interested in that. They're starting to assess their ordinance. They're looking at their PUD requirements, saying, how do we think about density a little bit differently? So we're going to move that forward as kind of a leave behind for local governments. And then every year, we were doing it a couple times a year. We bring all local planning staff, on-staff planners and planning consultants across the county. We're going to convene all of them in February, and we're going to, again, talk to them and share this information. And the support from local planners has been, it's there when we think about the practical nature of smaller, right-sized lots. It's just getting over that hump of the appointed planning commissioners. So we're going to start at the staffing level as well, kind of hit them at all angles to do that. And then the Hope Ridge project itself that is moving forward, that is going to be a showcase off the bat with what these products are that Nick and Matt have been working on. So the Hope Ridge application for the PUD in Holland, it's a lot of moving parts with that, but it's coming together for submittal on December 17th for the PUD package. The City of Holland Planning Commission will review it. At this point, we're looking at January 17th. We are having some discussions, and this is what we're dealing with, even in the City of Holland. They're supporters of attainable housing and moving that forward. But one of the challenges we're having right now deals with the transportation department. And because we're looking at this PUD with multiple homes on this couple acre site, they're looking at it differently. The transportation department on infrastructure needs. If we would go into that lot at the corner of Waverly and 8th Street and said, hey, we want to put a duplex, 1 or 2 duplexes here, we wouldn't have to put a sidewalk in. But because we're looking at the small home initiative with multiple units, transportation department in Holland is saying, you need to put a sidewalk in. There is no sidewalk anywhere. It doesn't exist on 120. So our engineers said it's going to be between $80,000 and $100,000 to build a sidewalk to nowhere. So as we're going through, and that just obviously gets passed on to the cost of this whole project, and we're trying to do something attainable. So as we're going, this has been a really good exercise for us, even dealing with the city of Holland. Kind of learn what are some of these challenges that we experience as we try and build affordable.
Mhm.
We're hoping to get past that as we work through transportation challenges and urban planning staff in Holland, and we'll see where that lands. But that's, I think, that's just an example of some of developers experience these challenges when they try and build and want to do something attainable, and there's local requirements that can stymie that.
And sometimes that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
Will the housing commission be attending that February meeting, or is that something that?
The planning
that-
commission meeting, January 17th.
Yeah,
If you would like to be there, yes, we can add it to your calendars.
What about the local planning staff and consultants?
Oh, and the planning, yeah, that February one, yes,
Yeah.
you're absolutely more than welcome
send
to
the
come to
invite.
that
we
as
should
well.
have that on our agenda.
Yep. Staff plan on getting out the save the date for that meeting before the end of this year. So we'll make sure that you guys are on that. Yeah, no, if there's no any more questions on Hope Ridge, I can just talk about some of these other emerging items.
Yep.
Yeah, there are irons in the fire. We're having conversations in Zealand. We're having conversations in Grand Haven Township about small initiative opportunities. We're also a staff taking a look at county property. You know, to Ken's point too, right? Let's find some properties and let's kind of move them. We have properties that the county owns that can be activated in the right way to support housing. So I'm working through some of those avenues right now. As they'll start to materialize, I can bring these forward to the or the housing commission. But I think that's a really a unique opportunity for the county to effectively collaborate in another avenue to support this work.
Are county properties exempt from local zoning?
No. Depends on, well, where it's situated, what's gonna happen with that property. Yes, in these situations, we may sell the property to a developer to then do it, and then they have to go through proper channels of zoning. There's opportunities to collaborate more with the land bank in that space to.
For transparency, would that be an open offer to developers, or would a developer be picked and then offered the property?
We have had conversations about, doing a solicitation of proposals.
Yeah.
Say, these are some of our design criteria, right? Could we make a demonstration site on unique county property that has access to utilities? Can we look at small footprint homes? Can we think about infrastructure differently? All those elements for thoughtful development, and we can help kind of guide that and see who wants to
Yeah, for
partner.
sure. Yep. I mean, it's the county's property to sell. They can put any deed restriction on there that they want, so. Great. Anything else, Paul?
No.
Thank you.
Good.
New business, anything that any of the commissioners want to speak about? We have a letter of support that we were talking about for Hope Ridge. We wanted to discuss that.
Yes,
Okay.
that would be great. So with the application, the PUD package going in City of Holland, the development team, Doors of Hope, and with Nick Rolinski, as the design consultant, they're hoping that the Housing Commission can provide a letter of support to put in that package. We've drafted one. If you have a printout of that.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Dear Holland City officials, the Ottawa County Housing Commission supports the Hope Ridge Housing Development Project, which blends the adaptive reuse of an existing historic estate home with the integration of modestly sized dwellings. The project aims to serve the mission-related and programmatic needs of the local nonprofit organization Doors of Hope, and in collaboration with Ottawa County, showcases the design, practicality, and benefits of reintroducing smaller sized dwellings into the fabric of our communities. Small footprint homes offer a unique and real opportunity to effectively address the current lack of attainable starter home opportunities in Ottawa County. If designed with intention and thoughtfully situated on appropriately sized lots, we are certain the smaller home product type could have an immediate positive impact on our current housing market. The key to catalyzing momentum for the Ottawa County Housing Commission Small Footprint Homes Initiative is to showcase these cost-conscious dwellings in the real world, and Hope Ridge is the perfect opportunity for that to occur. We are honored Doors of Hope has stepped forward as a key partner for this endeavor. Ultimately, the approval of this project within the city of Holland provides an opportunity to supercharge the momentum for the small homes concept and could encourage more communities to embrace this practical housing type and support residents in building this product throughout Ottawa County. We endorse this project and encourage your support. Any questions on that letter?
Great.
You guys cool with me signing it?
Mhm.
Perfect. Okay, public comments.
I have one new business. so-
Oh, okay, go for it.
Sorry. I mean, I think it's new. I was working with AI, just kind of looking for data in the county and, specifically to, ask how many of our young high school and college graduates are leaving the county? And some because they've got opportunities elsewhere, but the driving factor is affordability. And trying to construct like, what's the economic cost to the community? What's the cultural cost? And it's an overwhelming case for wanting to have livability for young high school graduates, college graduates, find jobs locally. And so I asked, like, what are some of the things that other counties, townships have done to encourage retention? And it had a long list, going to all the colleges and high schools and bring employers in and have recruitment, kind of show and tell. But if you really look at the housing need, the driving factor is we want to retain the people who are coming up through the schools and through the community to stay. If you create affordable housing that isn't optimized by that group of people, by that demographic, but rather, other people coming into the community, are you really accomplishing the underlying or solving the underlying issue of loss of basically a brain trust, a cultural trust? And would it benefit the Housing Commission to initiate a study that would be able to look at each of our 24 municipalities, communities, with an eye toward, how many people are you losing in this demographic, and what is the overall cost? It's not just economic, it's cultural, it's if children move away from their parents because they can't afford to live in the community, that has a downstream effect on aging, on relationship with grandchildren. And those are the kind of issues that I think if we can make a compelling case, develop that ground swell of grassroots support, saying, you know what, like, that is a really serious issue. And if we don't address it, it's just going to get worse. And it begs the question, okay, if we really don't want that to happen, like, what are you proposing? To which you could then say, okay, so here are some changes that your township can implement that are easily within the purview of authority and with the support of the community. If you can initiate these changes, then you can make your community more stable, and you won't have, the data suggests it was like upwards of 40% of high school graduates and over 50% of college graduates are leaving the county. And if you just think about what impact does that have, and it's been occurring now for, well over a decade, the losses are already profound. And if the trend doesn't reverse. Just the community culture will completely disappear and aging will be affected. So is it possible to initiate some kind of study? I don't think it would be expensive. I think we could do it with volunteers. But if we make the key retaining the young people in our county, have them live here, develop here, make that the main goal, and then housing becomes part of the issue. Employment is another part, but to employers, they would much rather have people who live in the community working in their factories and offices. There's a lot of statistics that show that that gives you a much more stable workforce. So make the human case, not just the physical case. And why we're doing it. Is that something that we would be able to?
There's data, quite a bit of data out there from Housing Next and Lakeshore Vantage and West Michigan Works, if that, I'm sure that ties into what you're talking about, Pat, that has already been done.
It's a matter of compiling it and then
Right.
presenting it
Yeah.
to each of the individual, townships and municipalities
Right.
in some kind of public forum where, it gets a lot of local attention.
I'd like to get the youth's opinion on that, Matt. Our resident youth person.
I was just gonna suggest if you're looking for something that's more qualitative, just to pull at heartstrings, you could, look at doing something with the Frost Center at Hope. They send out surveys to Hope students. So you're not getting a huge sample size. You'd be looking at a college population. But I think you would see a lot of Hope students come from the area from West Michigan. So you would get a good read, I think, on whether those students from the local area are staying or leaving.
Like that in Grand Valley too, because a lot
In
of,
Grand Valley.
a lot of folks, they want to stay here because they come and, learn here and build relationships in West Michigan. They want to stay here. So getting their opinion on what that should look like, even if it's bare minimum. Would you support a small homes initiative in this area and would you be a potential buyer in that market? Just getting that data would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
In addition, don't forget Career Line Tech Center.
Yeah.
Because those are not going to be college graduates, but they are the building blocks of all of our.
Infrastructure.
All of our infrastructure in the
Right.
county.
Yeah.
And I happen to work there as a mentor and
Mhm.
many of those. Students will tell you, I can't afford to live here, I'm
Right.
moving on.
Yep.
And the same thing has happened on the Brownfield Committee when we've developed an apartment complex and we're rent controlling some of the units. We'll have community members come in the open comment section and say, my kid can't afford to live here. And if you don't approve this thing, I have no hope. They're just gonna go live in Muskegon or Kent County or someplace else. So yeah, it is absolutely real.
Mhm.
Thanks for pointing that out.
And-
Absolutely real.
It is, and that is that pulling at the heartstrings bit, that type of qualitative data is helpful not only for us to feed information to local governments, I think it's also to get the business community around the table as they look for local workforce is a challenge, and I have noticed that for several years, like, how do we get our employers to step up even more in this space?
Yeah,
And that's the type of information that would be helpful for them as well.
Well, we've got. Like a bag full of. Bits and pieces of the puzzle. And. If we served as the drawstring to pull it all together and just be able to kind of present a very cohesive. And we've communicated with all these different organizations, we've sampled, we've gone to the colleges. And actually have a plan of action that these are the things that your community can do with us. To solve this. What could be a devastating problem, and it will get worse if it doesn't get better. And. And with 24 townships, we're bound to find some that are gonna look at that and say, yeah, we've got a lot of people in our community that have, reacted to it in a positive way. They're concerned, we're not doing enough, we need to make changes. And, but I don't see anybody really pulling it all together. I think there's a lot of, pushes in various directions, but, who other than the Housing Commission would have, the reach to, tie all that together and really present a cohesive, here's the issue. It's really not a shortage of housing. I mean, you could solve that, but it won't necessarily solve the underlying problem. So let's put the underlying problem up in front of everybody. And then, because small footprint homes is part of it, high density, loan programs, employer investment that, if we can come up with a way for them to be incentivized, hey, you've got money that you're investing anyway, invest it in your local community and, we can prioritize loans for your employees that, fit, these demographic profiles.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because
Perfect.
after our public comments,
Yeah.
we'll discuss what you're talking about.
Good. Well, then enough said for now.
Yeah, it's perfect. Got the
Sorry,
juices
it is,
already
yeah,
going. No,
yep.
it's great.
Public comment, second round, anybody? Going once, twice, and a third time. All right, so to Pat's comment, scheduling a strategic planning session with the Housing Commission and getting together those ideas. And Doug can probably speak to this from the commissioner side of things, is housing is a big priority for the commissioners for Ottawa County. And being that we're the housing department or housing commission, we want to come with ideas so that way they can ponder them and we can all together try to put some wheels to the ground on it. So we need to plan that. And when would that be a good time to do so?
Yes, we were, as Jared and I were talking before the meeting, and looking at February to have a strategic planning session with this housing commission during a regular meeting. Some of my staff, I've talked to them, they do strategic planning and facilitation work. And we would like to organize that. And we've got a few methodologies to pull ideas out of our commissioners, and we'll put them up on a wall and we'll just brain dump, and then we'll organize and prioritize and kind of look at what this housing commission, what we should pursue over the next 2-3 years. I think it'd be a really great exercise for us. And as Jared mentioned, can help stimulate some conversations with our commissioners as too.
So one question I have for you all is, we're doing the commissioner strategic planning in March.
Sounds right.
Just a question of whether you would like to come before that or after that. Would you like to inform that or be informed by?
I think, in my opinion, I think we would want to inform the commissioners beforehand, so that that way you as the commissioners, we're doing a lot of the legwork here and having
Okay.
those harder conversations and strategic planning in this department. So that way you guys can focus on the overhead 30,000 foot view and not have to get in the weeds.
Okay,
Is 100% my.
okay, so just a small wrinkle to that.
Mhm.
I think on Tuesday, and I'm not today, we have a discussion on planning about adding more members to this commission. And I'll have to check to see if that's the case. If that is the case, then I don't know how that,
Yeah,
How
I
you
still think
think
the
that
plan can
adds-
happen.
you know,
Yeah.
if February makes sense on both accounts, that's fine. But if you say, well, look, if that's gonna happen, maybe we do the strategic planning in May-ish, but it's kind of up to you.
Yeah, I think to keep the momentum that we have going from the small footprints initiative, and then the work that's already been done, we want to keep that moving forward. We can fill in the new people as they come in. Maybe that happens before February, maybe it doesn't, but I don't want to postpone
Okay,
the momentum we
that's
have
cool.
currently.
So one thing that I would recommend, and we did this in 2020, right? We had boardroom. That was a good space for us. And inviting stakeholders to be part of that. I mean, obviously the commissioners are the commissioners, but stakeholders are stakeholders as well,
Mhm.
right? So. You know, I'm not sure what that would look like on a practical basis.
Yeah.
But you're just kind of informing us as we inform the commissioners, the board of commissioners, right?
Yeah, I mean. Stakeholder input is extremely valuable and we appreciate our community members for coming to these meetings. I look at it as it is not an isolated thing with just us, but a community of stakeholders and concerned citizens coming with their ideas too. And then, because the last thing we want to do is work in a silo
Right,
and then
right.
be like, all right, here's our ideas, instead of valuing and gathering those ideas from across the board, because even at this table, we all have different ideas on how things can be
Right.
done. And I think it'd be wise to get our community members involved as well.
And so maybe as part of that, we kind of do an open invitation to stakeholders to reach out to us as commissioners, or how do you think that makes most sense? You know, how their presence can be at the table as well, right? Whether it's through us, like they reach out to the commissioners, like here's 3 or 4 things I want to make sure that are part of that plan, or whether they're directly involved, I'm not sure which makes more sense.
So I almost wonder if that's two different situations where we have community members and stakeholders coming in, we brainstorm, and then the planning session that we have with just the commissioners, so that way
Yeah, that makes sense.
we can actually get some stuff down and done. We have our own separate, planning
Yeah,
session.
maybe a 2-step process makes
Yeah.
sense as well.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. So I've got a meeting getting set with staff that can help facilitate this process. We'll work to create a methodology
Mhm.
on how we want to pursue strategic planning with this body, and we can bring that to our January meeting and talk through that.
Yeah.
And then activate it from there.
Yeah, because I feel like that would be wise to get more input. We have input on the small footprints because home project, because we did all the survey stuff, but I'm sure there's other ideas that we haven't thought of that people are uniquely supportive of changing things up, so.
So who would we see as stakeholders? If we're gonna bring some stakeholders together, what do they look like?
By some of our development partners that are in the room, here's some of our
Municipalities,
Yep.
making sure that they have.
I agree that
Nonprofit agencies.
I have kind of this one track thing because of where I came from, okay? When my former employer, we went to put a factory or a building in someplace. We were really, really serious about what does the workforce look like? Are they going to be able to live closely? So do our stakeholders include some of our, medium and larger employers to talk to us about what their needs are? And many of these factory folks around here are driving from other counties because they can't afford to live here. How much better would their lives be if they lived in Ottawa County rather than driving in from Muskegon or Kent County because they can't afford to live
I
here?
think
So
some of that can be had
So-
through Lakeshore.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Lakeshore
we
Management.
need some of
Maybe
those.
you use that as kind of the focal point, obviously anybody else is welcome to show, but since they have, so much of contact on a daily
With
basis.
workforce development, having West Michigan Works there, from their business side of things, because they're also talking to employers about workforce needs. Maybe we can get some anecdotal, conversation from them as well. I know I used to do that job, so.
Yeah.
You have your ear to the ground on employers and.
I'd like to suggest that we actually schedule more than one strategic planning session. That, we've got to really break it down into components and who the stakeholders are. It could end up being chaotic. If we don't, break it down into
So
smaller.
to that point, Pat, I think we could all individually say who we think our stakeholders should be for that. And come together and send that to Graham and Paul.
Like an employer stakeholder strategy meeting would have different things than say, a local leader. Like you've got church groups, civic organizations. There are a lot of interested parties who, are clearly, invested in our community. If you bring them all together at once. That's a lot to keep track of and then to develop anything cohesive. But if you can identify, we've got, some big employers and smaller ones and they represent a variety. We'll have a strategic session with them, and then one with civic organizations, and then, and that could include the not-for-profits. Figure out who those players are and maybe through a series, and then you kind of have a wrap up where you included their input, put it all together in like one report that we could then give to the commissioners.
I like that idea, and I think we could tie it into when presenting to the local planning staff. We could, do an invite there, or, meeting after meeting after meeting, if we have too many, there's burnout there, so we want to make sure we get the right people involved first and foremost, get their ideas, have kind of that brainstorming session, kind of like what we're gonna do about the small footprint homes initiative, educating them. But almost the opposite of the stakeholders saying, here's what we're seeing, our true needs and big needs and possible solutions. And then as a commission, we get together and figure out how to cohesively present that to Board of Commissioners. So that way we at least have some idea of what to do in tandem with a small footprint initiative.
I'm gonna urge everybody to do their own research. Since I've been on the Housing Commission, I've started asking people where they live when I'm in a professional setting. Okay, so far my dentist and his entire staff do not live in Ottawa County. My physical therapist does not live in Ottawa County. I mean, these are people with good paying jobs that can't afford to live here, so somehow we need to capture them. I'd like to live here, they say, but there's not a place for them.
So even anecdotal evidence like that,
I think it's important.
I
I mean,
think
if I
it's
got a
great.
doctor and his whole staff, none of them,
absolutely.
they're all driving in
Yeah.
here. But they have customers here and it's an important place for them and they make their money here, but boy, they take it back to Kent County and spend it there.
So I guess next steps on that will I'll have you and your team figure out timeline wise, if what makes sense.
We'll do timeline and think about start to collect your ideas on the
Yeah.
stakeholders and what the structure also
Yeah.
could look like.
And just make a recommendation
Yeah,
that,
please do.
over the next 3-4 weeks, just send him, we can see what individually as stakeholders and then.
Yeah.
Having yourself reach out to those folks and.
Yep.
Make sure it's nice and wide and.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay, great.
On to proposed Ottawa County Housing Commission meeting schedule. You guys see that in your packet. I think the only one that I would see is a possible issue is the July 2, just being that it's that close to the 4th. I'd probably either move that or even cancel it if we had nothing pending or,
Yeah, I
pressing.
listed some potential dates
Okay.
down at the bottom there that
okay,
might be affected by holidays. If you wanted to visit those now or just.
Yeah, we can visit that now. July 9th, if we need to. Instead of July 2nd.
And why don't we just go ahead and move them to those that are not on the holiday weeks right now?
That would be.
All that is spring break, isn't it?
And then that's September 3 is Labor Day, is that?
Yeah.
You wanna just move them to your proposed date?
Yeah, I'll just
Yeah.
make a motion to adopt the.
Good planning.
Yeah, is there a second?
Yeah, second.
All in favor? Aye.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't put that down to
No.
motion.
Doug motion,
Ken,
Ken, and second it.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thanks for doing that.
yeah, thank you for that work. All right. If there's nothing else from the commission, call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.